It does not take more than even 10 minutes. Ikiwa imeenda sana ni 10 minutes. Like in Naivasha vile nilikuwa nakuelezana ndio ilikuwa kumbwa.
Was embedded in real businesses. Had an air charter service with a private jet. We had a jewelry chain with 30 locations on the East Coast. A lot of cash goes through the Diamond District every single day.
We see that a lot with cyber criminals, you know, that sense of being that entrepreneur.
So what was the motivation, you think, for her? Is it money?
So as a black money market operator, I have a supply of dollars. My supply comes from drug traffickers. Now I have to find people who have a demand. So the dollars generally would come to me in suitcases, duffel bags, boxes. New York was a key point. Get $1 million, $2 million per delivery.
Viewing organized crime through an entrepreneurial lens reveals why these groups can pivot faster than any state bureaucracy. Crime networks realized they could set up fake shell entities and apply for emergency relief funds in under 10 minutes, completely, bypassing traditional due diligence.
It does not take more than even 10 minutes. Ikiwa imeenda sana ni 10 minutes. Like in Naivasha vile nilikuwa nakuelezana ndio ilikuwa kumbwa.
With fast-tracked approvals, automated vetting, systems became a goldmine for anyone looking to pull off a swift, low-effort exploit. To get past financial watchdogs, crime syndicates actually trained their front men using standard compliance interview manuals to blend in perfectly.
How to pass an AML and KYC interview. So if you are applying for any anti-money laundering and know your customer job role with any organisation, make sure you stay tuned because I promise to help you be successful at your interview. And to achieve that goal, this is what I will cover during this tutorial.
When your money mule knows the compliance checklist better than the auditor, the system is functionally compromised. When relief systems were flooded with millions of applications, the manual review process broke down completely under the sheer volume.
It does not take more than even 10 minutes. Ikiwa imeenda sana ni 10 minutes. Like in Naivasha vile nilikuwa nakuelezana ndio ilikuwa kumbwa.
In a system designed for maximum speed, security measures are often the first thing sacrificed to prevent a total operational freeze. Effective money laundering during the pandemic relied heavily on precising cash-heavy business facades that looked completely legitimate on paper.
Built the persona of Robert Musella. I dressed the part, certainly had the lifestyle, drove a Rolls-Royce, Mercedes, Jaguar. I was embedded in real businesses. Had an air charter service with a private jet. We had a jewelry chain with 30 locations on the East Coast. A lot of cash goes through the Diamond District every single day. So if you've got those kinds of businesses, you have a very good excuse for where the cash came from.
Legitimate fronts provided the perfect alibi for large influxes of cash, making government auditors almost entirely blind to the deception. At its core, the goal of these syndicates was simple disguise. Relief fund fraud as normal business revenue and funnel it directly into the clean financial system.
Now, what do you wash? You wash dirty things? So, when you wash your dirty money and make it ready to enter the system as clean, legitimate money, it is called as money laundering. So, you can see, money laundering is an illegal activity where you try to make the money earned through criminal activities appear as legitimate money.
The genius was taking government money, claiming it was business revenue, and feeding it right back into the banks as clean capital. Street-level operatives were quickly recruited to act as directors for fake companies, armed with basic legal scripts to handle any preliminary inquiries.
What happened was I work in a shipping office, so I'm a straight-going kid, straight family. I go through Finsbury Park, and with some kids I knew, they was all slung out of school because they were bad lads, fired a starting pistol. So 2-old Bill from Stoke Newington walked in, and they're having a go at these kids. And I went, oh, you can't do that. And they went, do what? I said, you can't do that. I said, you've got to have a responsible adult here before you can talk to young fellas like that. He went, you seem to know a lot about the law. I said, I know my rights. And he went, is that right?
Training young, clean-cut front men to push back on legal technicalities successfully stalled minor audits until the funds were long gone. During the global crisis, traditional regulatory shields were lowered, allowing dirty relief funds to blend seamlessly with real corporate transactions.
Now, what do you wash? You wash dirty things? So, when you wash your dirty money and make it ready to enter the system as clean, legitimate money, it is called as money laundering. So you can see money laundering is an illegal activity where you try to make the money earned through criminal activities appear as legitimate money.
When the global economy is in chaos, distinguishing between a dying business and a fraudulent shell company becomes nearly impossible. Syndicates used stolen personal identities harvested from fintech startups to apply for loans, leaving innocent citizens to deal with illegal fallout.
The world. What can happen to people like you and me if we don't be cautious about what we are consuming, how we are consuming, and who are the startups we are sharing our data with? Watch this episode till the end because we've talked about the advantages, disadvantages, the right things, and what can go really, really wrong with you and me.
Wait. Data security and consumer tech allow criminal accountants to easily purchase verified profile packets on the dark web. The cash generated from relief fraud was quickly integrated with existing illicit supply chains, amplifying the scale of underground operations.
Huge parties all across London and Essex. It wasn't long then before I saw the money that was being made through the parties with ecstasy, and it just made sense at some point I would get involved in that particular, product. So I got heavily involved in that, the manufacture and the importation of ecstasy tablets. Remember, actually, first drug deal I actually done was funny because it was a painter that used to work.
Government relief funds. As digital banking platforms fast-tracked new accounts, syndicates exploited weak validation loops to siphon out relief capital.
The world. What can happen to people like you and me if we don't be cautious about what we are consuming, how we are consuming, and who are the startups we are sharing our data with? Watch this episode till the end because we've talked about the advantage.
Identity. Theft wasn't just a byproduct, it was the primary vehicle used to compromise fast-tracked relief databases. A new wave of young, tech-literate subcontractors was hired to harvest clean banking accounts, scaling up the speed of syndicate operations.
About to meet a young teenager who's been deetzing, and for those of you who don't know what deetzing is, it's going online, stealing people's credit card details and using it to purchase whatever you want.
I've been able to get like all-inclusive trips and holidays, and my Netflix accounts, my Spotify, and I know everyone's getting their money back. That's the funniest thing.
Though bank fraud has been around for years, this is an entirely new trend that kids seem to be picking up the skills for at school. We've had to film at the Vice office instead of his house,
lowering the barrier to entry with digital fraud tutorials turned amateur hackers into major assets for organized crime networks. Criminal accountants coached frontmen to pass deep dive compliance suitability calls, ensuring their shell companies appeared entirely valid.
Interview. This is the organization's chance to assess the type of person you are and the skills and experience you possess that will add value to their organization. Make sure you give a confident and positive answer that helps to build a connection with the interviewer. So here's a brilliant example answer to help you.
Human verification fails when the applicant is perfectly trained to play the role of a struggling, honest business owner, to wash millions in government funds, syndicates plug into underground informal banking networks that match cash-heavy businesses with overseas importers.
Informal banking system that's made available to people who operate through the underground. So as a black money market operator, I have a supply of dollars. My supply comes from drug traffickers. Now I have to find people who have a demand for dollars. People who want to buy dollars are oftentimes importers around the world who otherwise have to go through their central bank and spend 25% of their money to officially get dollars.
Shadow banking systems exist because they offer a cheaper, faster alternative to heavily taxed official central bank pipelines. Once the relief money was safely in bank accounts, it was systematically routed through high-volume casinos to break the audit trail.
Okay, let's move on to question number 3 now. What are some common methods used for money laundering? Now see, this is again a very basic question, and your answer to this question also tells your understanding of how the system works. So different types of transactions that are used for money laundering are: number one, gambling, where casino transactions are used to launder the money.
Blending fraudulent funds into casino chips remains a highly effective way to convert dirty digital transfers into clean cash. Syndicates constantly move their operational headquarters across borders, taking advantage of inconsistent data loss to stay out of reach.
Class though, by the way, let me also tell you, I don't think so I've shared anywhere, but I was topper in the class. और मैं 6 महीने बाद गया था स्कूल में, और 6 महीने मैं किसी और स्कूल में था. We were changing house, right?
Regulatory friction and lack of international data sharing are the exact reasons why these networks operate with near impunity. The systematic exploitation of COVID-19 use templates, developed decades ago by the early cyber networks of the dark web.
Most wanted list in 2006, escaped from prison. You built the first organized cybercrime community called Shadow Crew that is the precursor to today's darknet and darknet markets. And for all this, the U.S. intelligence service called you the original internet godfather. So first question, how did your career as a cybercrime criminal begin?
Modern relief fraud isn't a new phenomenon. It is simply the natural evolution of early. For syndicates scaling up their reach, syndicates purchased massive batches of stolen credit card credentials to pay for the hosting and domains used in fake application portals.
A young teenager who's been deetzing, and for those of you who don't know what deetzing is, it's going online, stealing people's credit card details and using it to purchase whatever you want.
I've been able to get like all-inclusive trips and holidays, and my Netflix accounts, my Spotify, and I know everyone's getting their money back. That's the funniest thing.
Though bank fraud has been around for years, this is an entirely new trend that kids seem to be picking up the skills for at school.
We've had to film at the Vice office instead of his house because
digital identity theft has become the cheap raw material that fuels every high-volume government benefits scam. Shadow financial networks developed in developing nations were repurposed globally to facilitate rapid, untraceable relief fund wire transfers. Localized informal money transfer systems are highly resilient because they rely on trust networks rather than digital paper trails. As law enforcement began cracking down desperate frontmen who tried to run off with the stolen relief funds face severe, often lethal retribution.
Well, you know, he did a robbery yesterday. Apparently he got shot dead. That's all I know. And we've got to go to the mortuary to identify him. And they lifted the cover back. And while they was doing that, this policeman went, "We're really sorry it happened. I'm afraid your husband left us no choice."
Behind the clean spreadsheets and shell, companies' lies are brutal. Underworld that does not tolerate internal theft. In financial capitals like New York, structured cash hiccups allowed syndicates to convert government wire transfers into physical, untraceable dollars.
So the dollars generally would come to me in suitcases, duffel bags, boxes. New York was a key point. Get $1 million, $2 million per delivery. I generally had runners who picked it up and brought it. You don't usually get the guy who really controls the safe on the street.
Using low-level runners for physical cash handoffs creates an unbreakable firewall between the money and the mastermind. Criminal networks laundered the stolen relief funds by generating fraudulent trade documents, unfabricated shipping records to justify international wire transfers.
The trade transactions are manipulated to make them appear legitimate. For example, they may over-invoice or under-invoice the goods, misclassify the goods to avoid customs duties, and even use false shipping documents also. Such activities make it difficult for the law enforcement agencies to trace the origin of the funds.
Trade-based money laundering is highly effective because verifying the physical existence of shipped goods is a massive logistical challenge. Even when caught and imprisoned, the leaders of these syndicates often retain their status, directing assets from inside the wire.
When I got accepted, it was, I'm a self-inflicted, groomed individual because I wanted the attention.
You wanted the accolade.
I wanted the accolade. I wanted to be on the landings. I wanted to be a cat A. I wanted to be the baddest gangster. I wanted to be hard. I wanted to have a gun. I wanted to get shot. I wanted to recover.
The criminal reputation built. The most dangerous fraudsters aren't street criminals. They are credentialed experts who know exactly how to exploit regulatory blind spots.